Hello, everyone, and welcome to Southern Lee Cavalier Football and the Mike McClure Coaches Show. I'm Austin Thomas, and I'll be your host as we talk Cavalier football and visit with Southern Lee head coach Mike McClure. As always, we want to thank our sponsors for helping you bring our show each and every single Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. on 105.5 FM WFJA. Wilkinson Chevrolet, Domino's, Farm Bureau of Tramway, Sheriff Brian Estes, Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, and Jones Printing Company. Tonight's show will also be rebroadcast at 6 p.m. this Friday night prior to our 7 o'clock game on 95.1 FM, 1050 AM, WWGP. Video of our coaches show will be posted on the WFJA Facebook page each Wednesday by noon. I look forward to talking with Cavalier head coach Mike McClure tonight and bringing you exciting coverage of Southern Lee Cavalier football. We're going to take a short break and hear from our great sponsors. We'll be right back with Coach McClure right after these messages.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix-It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
And we do welcome you back to the Southern Lee Coaches Show. Austin Thomas in studio here at WFJA with head coach of the Cavaliers, Coach Mike McClure. Coach McClure, thank you once again for joining us here at the studio. Coach, we're coming off of another tough loss for the Cavaliers. South Johnston Cavaliers fall by a final score of 23-17. But we spoke after the game. You came up to the booth and joined Mike and I, and it seemed like after a game like that, really, you couldn't be even more proud of your guys for the performance that they put up Friday night.
Yeah, my guys, second week in a row, leaving everything they have out on the field. And it shows after the game, their demeanor has changed. After a loss like that, they're, more upset, more hurt. Versus, in the past, it kind of was like one of those feelings like, do they really care, or do they,
Right.
does it affect them? But now you're starting to see it really have an effect on them and take a toll on them when they lose these close games like this, or when they lose in general, which to me is a sign of growth, a sign that they're not just out here taking the sport for granted or taking the game for granted, that they truly are invested in it. And, it's a good sign that we're heading in the right direction, in terms of leaving everything on the field and playing with emotion.
Well, Friday night was certainly a game of two halves, so to speak. First half, the first two quarters of that game, Cavaliers looked tremendous on both offense and defense. Especially from the point of turnovers, Cavaliers were able to force several turnovers due to what you and I talked about last week, the speed of your Cavalier players. Talk about how that's just continuing to form into a vital part of this team.
Well, that's just something that we preach on and talk about all the time is turnovers. And, we do turnover drills every day defensively, and that's something that we just force and emphasize. And it's almost like one of those things that once the kids have some success at it, that's all they really want to do is force turnovers and get turnovers. So, which is a good thing, and we're starting to see that now. So, we had 6 this week. We can only try to outdo 6. Try to go for 7 this week. But good things happen when you're causing teams to turn the ball over.
Absolutely. And then on the reverse side of things, especially in the first half on Friday, the offense picked up right where they left off against Green Hope in terms of production. We're starting to see more and more explosive runs. I believe there was a 68-yard run on Friday night for a touchdown. Robbie Sims is starting to get more comfortable staying in the pocket and completing passes. He's getting more and more experience there. But the thing that we're noticing, too, is how many guys are fitting into those slots in terms of, positive production for the offense. What can you say about everyone that's contributing offensively?
Well, the biggest thing is week 1. After the week 1 loss, I really I spoke to everybody, and I told them everybody what their role was on this team and what we needed from everybody on this team. And since that conversation that I had with everybody, the guys have stepped up and filled those roles that we needed. We don't have a lot of depth. We don't have, 3 and 4 guys at one position. So guys understand that If they go down, then we're losing a very important part of the offense, and so we have to try to find the next man up. But like you say, guys are just playing to their full potential right now, and they're leaving everything on the field. But guys are stepping up in areas that we need them to step up. And like you say, we only dressed 23, 24 kids. We need all 23, 24. And it's funny. I just had this conversation with them today at the end of practice that everybody has to know their role and find their role, whether it's special teams or whether it's offense or defense. Maybe not everybody can be a starter on offense or on defense, but find your role, find where you can get in at on the special team, because we need everybody, and it's going to take everybody for us to be successful.
Well, I think of a kid like a Tyrese Douglas or even Anthony Robinson. Tyrese on the ground, and we'll talk about him in our next segment, of course. But Tyrese on the ground has really cemented himself as the number one rusher on the team. Anthony Robinson, on the other hand, has definitely cemented himself as the top receiver on the team. But what is good to see, and was the complete opposite of what we saw from South Johnson, who used one running back all night long, so you knew when he was coming, and the Cavaliers did a good job with him. Like you talked about, you have so many kids that are able to step up when it's not time to go to the top guy. And, talk us through from a coaching standpoint how that's an advantage for you, for opposing defenses.
Because it makes it difficult for the defense to get ready, Right. Well, we versus keying in on one guy, you got to worry about two or three guys, and that's what we try to tell our guys, and that's what we try to harp on, is that let's not just be a one guy team.
Right.
Let's everybody contribute. Now that way that teams don't know who's going to get the ball, because we can go to number 8 just as much as we can go to number 1, or we can go to number 6, or we can go to number 4. We can go to anybody, and I think that starts with our kids knowing that we believe in them to make the plays, and that we trust in them to make the plays, and that's just how we want to be, so that we can't be easily identified as, well, they're going to give this kid the ball, give that kid the ball. You have to actually sit down and game plan for us as a collective team, not just for an individual.
So we go into the second half of the game, and credit to South Johnson for making some good adjustments during halftime. The Cavaliers had kind of a tough going of it as the game got further on, especially late in the fourth quarter when South Johnson was able to go ahead. How are you able to take that experience on Friday night and push it forward as the season goes on?
Well, it's just another building block like we took from Green Hope, and then now we take, situation as leading all the way up to the third and some of the fourth quarter. Now we take that and add that as a piece of the puzzle to now as we get ready to get into conference play. We've been in all these situations already. We've been in these places. It's familiar now. We know how to handle ourselves versus it being unfamiliar these past 2 weeks, and we not really knowing how to respond. Now we know how to respond, and now we can do a better job at closing the game out and it ending with a win instead of a loss.
So we've talked about the defense, really being the shining star of this team so far this season as the offense starts to catch up and find its footing. But another aspect of the team that is really starting to come into its own is special teams. I know that you talked about that special teams was a big focus for you in the offseason, but specifically Brian McCullum this past Friday night had a good showing, had a 40-something yard field goal there in the first half, was also 2 for 2 on PATs. He did have a blocked field goal at one point. But talk about, Brian McCullum, who's only a sophomore. Talk about, what practice with him is like and his mentality, because somewhere down the road we're going to need him in a big moment. So can you just talk about him as a player?
Well, he's one of those kids that he's going to go out and he's going to work on his own. He's going to get his work in. He's going to get his kicks in that he needs to get in, and he wants to be right, and he's a perfectionist. Everything has to line up right. He has to have a certain ball to kick with at practice. He just, everything has to be right for him, but that's his routine. So he's get familiar with it. He's get comfortable, and then we put him under some high pressure situations at practice. Now nothing's going to amount to the game, but just a simple example would be we'll line them up from like 40 or so and say, hey, you missed this one, and everybody's going to run. You know,
Okay.
and so now the team's behind him cheering him on, so he can now fulfill the kick because they don't want to get on the sideline.
I was gonna say nobody wants to run.
Yeah,
so.
nobody wants to get on the
Yeah.
sideline to go run. So it's just kind of putting those type of situations on them. Like I said, we did have the kick block this week, so we went back to actually having a front, pressure our guys to make sure that they're getting the steps, because special teams, I've been saying it changes the momentum of the game, and it changes the game. If you look at that Florida State LSU game, it was just a matter of a blocked field goal.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it changes the game, man, and that's what we try to get our kids to understand, that special teams is one of those momentum shifters.
And Coach, real quick, we're getting ready to go to a break here soon, but talk to us about Robbie Sims and his advancement as a quarterback from week 1 to now, and what you're seeing in his development.
Well, a lot more poised. He's a lot more calmer in there. Still some things to work on as far as standing in the pocket a little longer and those type of things, but that comes, like you said, with experience, and with even just being more comfortable with the position. But he's taking full leadership role of the offense, getting guys lined up as he should, and demanding more out of his guys. So he's playing his role as a quarterback.
Well, he's certainly coming along. Real quick before we head to a commercial break, a quick look at the Sandhills Athletic Conference scoreboard from this Friday night. Lee County goes over South Granville 34-28, a good game there. Pinecrest finds its footing against Middle Creek, final score 41-24. Hoke County with a big victory over Southview High School, 50-32 is your final score. Marlboro County takes down Scotland County 27-24. Good game going on there. Richmond County, third week in a row with a loss, as they were defeated by Cardinal Gibbons by 31-0. And then Union Pines comes away with a victory over Western Harnett by a final score of 40-14. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. This is the Mike McClure Coaches Show here on WFJA Sports. We'll be right back.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix-It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
Welcome you back to WFJA Sports. Austin Thomas in studio for the Southern Lee Coach Mike McClure Show. Of course, Cavalier head coach Mike McClure joining us. As always, here on our second segment of the program, we like to give out a little bit of hardware. And, of course, this segment is brought to you by Norman Financial Group and Bubba Subs and Pizza. First player we're going to talk about, Coach, like we always do, is the offensive player of the game. This is a guy who we talked about a lot last week, and we've already talked about tonight, but really seems to be finding his stride and carrying the ball. Mike and I's choice of the Norman Financial Group and Bubba Subs Pizza offensive player of the game was Tyrese Douglas, had 14 carries for over 80 yards on Friday night. Coach, what can you say that hasn't already been said about Tyrese and his role?
He just, continue to find a way to get it done on the ground for us, continue to find the end zone, and, find his way in this offense, in our offense, and find his place. He actually came up to me today at practice and said, "Coach, I wish I can change my number every game." I say, "Why?" He say, "That way people don't know where I'm at on the field." I say, "Well, you got to get ready for that, because they're gonna be keying in on you now, So it's just a matter of continuing to find ways to get him touches and get him the ball, and so that he can make runs. But those guys up front, he's nothing without the guys up front.
Yeah.
So that's not let that go unnoticed, or the guys creating those ways for him to run. So just proud of him and his efforts.
Well, and one thing we've noticed too, as the season has started to go on, is that with his runs, it's a lot of, here's a 3-yard gain, here's a 4-yard gain, and then out of nowhere, he has a 42-yard run, downfield. He kind of just chips away until he finally finds that gap. And, talk to us about, in the offseason, his explosive speed and what you saw there and how you work with him on that.
Well, his biggest thing is he came to us late. He actually came to us like that first week of official practices when he came in, and so really didn't know what he had to offer to us or what he brought to the table. And we saw it in the scrimmages, but it wasn't until we saw it against Westover, and then really against Green Hope that we really saw what he brought to the table. But that's just how our whole offense is set up. If we can get five yards of carry, we're fine. We don't need the big play. We like the big play, but if we can chip it away, and get 5 yards of carry or 4 yards here, then we're fine. We're right where we need to be.
Well, and that was something too that I noticed Friday night in keeping the stats of the game. As compared to Green Hope, where you had quite a few offensive drives where it was 3 plays, 4 plays, and that's when you scored.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this past Friday night, you had 2 or 3 9-play drives. So you're starting to drag that out
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more, keeping your defense off the field a little bit longer and wearing their defense down. And of course, that goes back to having playmakers like Tyrese to be able to do that. All right, our next player, our Norman Financial Group and Bubba Subs and Pizza defensive player of the game, goes to a young man whose name we got to call plenty of times on Friday night, has really found his own on the defensive side of the ball, is Mr. Dylan Green, who on Friday night had an interception and also one of the most exciting plays defensively that Mike and I have seen so far this season, with a tremendous pass deflection deep in the end zone corner. Coach, talk to us about Dylan.
Dylan, one of those guys that I had to convince to play defense first, and then once I finally got him, locked in on defense, and he realized his potential back there at defense, and he really bought into it all summer. And he's just, like I said, I was anxious to see how he would do this season because he had a tremendous summer. With 7-on-7 counts, passing leagues, and those things. He just was always around the football, and he's carried that over. A lot of kids don't carry 7-on-7 over until real 11-on-11 football,
right.
Contact football, and he's actually done that. This second week in a row he's had an interception, and I think he got a total of 10 tackles on the season, and he just keeps finding his way around the football and keep making plays, and it's a good. I wish he could have scored on that interception that he had, but. He got us in good field position, but it was a great break on the ball, and he's breaking up passes as well as a free safety should do.
Right, and so the play that I referred to on Friday night was it was a deep pass into the far corner of the end zone, and it was 1-on-1 the whole way down, and Dylan just at the perfect moment was able to jump up and literally deflect the ball out of the air.
Mm-hmm.
Clean play, terrific pass defense, and you talked about you moved him from what he thought himself as an offensive player over to defense, but where's the motivation there for a kid like that to find his footing in something that's so new for him from a coaching standpoint? How do you approach that?
Just getting on the field.
Yeah.
Wanting to get on the field somewhere, and he bought into it. At the time, our offense was we had a lot of receivers last year, so he just he was in the rotation, but just not as much. And then he was actually starting, but he just wasn't getting as many touches as he should with his athletic ability. So we just figured let's look at him on defense and see what he can do. And I mean, he came over to defense and he hasn't looked back yet. I mean, his first big game that he had on defense last year was at Union Pines where he got another interception. So. He had a big game before he had to exit due to a concussion. So, but like I said, I was curious to see how he would do coming into this season, and he's done well. He's done great.
Absolutely. And so now comes the time where we get to announce the Coach McClure Player of the Game. This, of course, is brought to you by Wilkinson Chevrolet. So, Coach, who is your selection for last week?
Well, this week we chose to go with Michael Tate Blanks. Inside linebacker. We chose to go with Mike, but just because he contributes on special teams, he starts on defense, he gets in on offense and runs the ball a little bit on offense or gets in and block at tight end. So he just kind of does it all, but he had a tremendous night on defense. So he had 15 tackles, 1 interception, and a forced fumble. And, I mean, that's right now he has to be leading the conference in tackles right now. I mean, he's got like 30-some tackles total.
It has to be a tough fight between him and Jordarian Hamilton at this point because both of those guys on defense are just all over the place.
They are, and it was a good switch to move Jordarian to where he is now, to where he could tap into his potential. He's more comfortable in his new role now. So, but yeah, Mike had a great night defensively, and he can only continue to get better, you know, as a sophomore at that position, at that inside linebacker position. And he takes control of the defense, lines everybody up, and I challenged him to do that, and he's been responding well.
Well, that's certainly apparent as this season has gone on. So congratulations to Mike, Dylan, and Tyrese for taking home some hardware this week. Coach, real quick before the break, upcoming on Friday, we have a game. We're hitting the road once again, take on the Fairmont Golden Tornadoes, a game that was supposed to have happened last year but had to get canceled due to some unavailable players. Fairmont's 1-2 overall so far this season, including a tough loss last week to Westover, 54-0. Real quick, what can you tell us about Fairmont?
Well, athletic. They're an athletic team, and believe it or not, they're very similar to us offensively, which plays in our favor because it's not much that we have to kind of reteach or re-emphasize, because we've been seeing our offense since the summertime, and we've been lining up against that. So it's just a matter of tweaking things and fixing things according to how they like to run it. But overall, it's the same scheme-wise, you know, and we just want to take advantage of areas that we can, such as special teams. You know, that's a big area that we want to focus in on and take advantage of, and so that's what we, plan to do.
Well, Coach, we're certainly looking forward to this Friday night as we hit the road against Fairmont. Coach, once again, thank you for joining us here on WFJA. We're going to step aside for one final commercial break. Coach Mike McClure Show here on 105.5.
WFJA would like to thank the following advertisers for bringing you the Lee County Coaches Show: Jones Printing Company, Domino's, WilkinsonCars.com, Sheriff Brian Estes, Farm Bureau of Tramway, the Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, Fix-It Plumbing, and Brick Capital Video.
Welcome back, and we hope you've enjoyed listening to the Mike McClure Coaches Show. As always, I want to thank Coach Mike McClure for joining us here on WFJA. We remind you to join us each and every single Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. on 105.5 FM WFJA, and this Friday night prior to the game at 6 o'clock on WWGP 95.1 FM 1050 AM. Our Coaches Show is also posted on the WFJA website and Facebook page each Wednesday by noon. We also want to remind you to check out the WFJA website. Go to Sports, then High School Football, and you will see a choice of pages to include our results page with complete game articles posted by midnight each and every Friday night after the games, conference standings and power rankings, schedules for all teams in the Sandhills Athletic Conference, and up-to-date season stats for the Southern Lee Cavaliers. We are glad you have taken these opportunities to join us this season for Cavalier football. Good luck to the Cavs this Friday night as they hit the road once again, traveling to Fairmont High School to face the Golden Tornadoes. We thank each of our sponsors for bringing you our show tonight: Wilkinson Chevrolet, Domino's, Farm Bureau of Tramway, Sheriff Brian Estes, Dairy Bar and Flame Restaurants, and Jones Printing Company. And we thank you for listening to WFJA and WWGP Sports. It's time for Southern Lee football.